Welcome to the Worst of the Riot Extra podcast. This week, it's Super Bowl week, and so we're going to do a little sports. My question for you today, Isaiah, is as a sports fan, what do you think is the best feeling you can experience as a sports fan?
There's many differences. I mean, obviously, it's Super Bowl week, so you would say winning. Winning it all. I mean, winning it all is the first thing that comes to mind immediately.
Yeah.
Winning the championship, winning the Super Bowl, winning the national championship, whatever it is, you would think the best feeling would be winning.
Yeah.
Winning a lot.
But before we go forward, if you could choose just one team that you support to win a championship for the rest of your life, which one would it be?
Like, that'd be the only team that can win?
Yeah.
Ooh, that's so tough. I'm going to go, this is wild. Such
what
a
are you
tough one.
You got the Cavs, you got the
Browns.
Cavs.
Cavs, Browns, Ohio State. If only one of them can win the rest of the way,
Yeah.
I'm probably going to choose Ohio State. Ohio State football.
Something you've already seen, but you want to see it again.
See, the reasoning for that is Ohio State has been so consistently good over the course of my lifetime. They've been, the only consistency I've had is them being great and the Browns being bad. And so I probably would enjoy the Browns winning more because they've been so bad, but I'm used to the Browns letting me down. I'm not used to Ohio State falling short. Ohio State also has so many people that hate Ohio State.
Yeah.
That being an Ohio State fan when Ohio State's not good would be the worst thing possible. That's the worst thing I can imagine as a sports fan.
Yeah.
Everybody knows the Browns have a horrible history.
Yeah.
So no one's going to kick me while I'm down for the Browns being bad. People would probably kick me down my entire life for Ohio State being bad. So I would choose Ohio State winning.
Man, now I'm trying to think for me. I don't have a good answer because so like the top teams I cheer for Sabres in hockey, Packers in football. There's just no college team that I could choose. And then the Red Sox in baseball. And the Sabres have never won. I couldn't pick them though, because I know some hockey people, but I could never, because hockey isn't as big, I could never parade around feeling the good feeling of being the champion and everybody else knowing it.
And is that the fun part for you?
That's part of it.
That's part of it. It's a big part of it.
Coming in to work the next, like if the Sabres could win the Stanley Cup this year, they're not going to, but they could win. And you may not even know if I don't say it.
I would know.
You would know, but Nikki wouldn't know.
Nikki wouldn't know.
Yeah.
And you know what? If they won, I wouldn't care. I'm sorry.
Yeah, right. Well,
but I wouldn't care. It wouldn't be like you would come in and I'd be like, you got to be feeling good.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't be like, I wouldn't be overjoyed and I wouldn't be kicking rocks. I would just be like, that's awesome. I bet you feel great.
So then I move also to the Red Sox, who have won it in my lifetime, and that feels good. But yet again, baseball too. I don't know. It is really satisfying. I do really love watching the Red Sox win, but I think I have to go Packers. And the real reason is because in football, the playoffs, it's always one and done. And so I think it feels more satisfying to win a one and done game than over a series, because it's a singular moment that everybody is paying attention to.
And the thing, this is a big debate too in sports. I think series are great for MLB, for the NBA. The series concept in the playoffs is great.
Yeah.
But it does kind of get you to the finish line before it actually happens. Like if a team's up 3-1,
yep,
they're going to win.
Right.
Like you get that feeling where if a team is just dominating game one, they dominate in game two, and you just know it's over.
Yeah.
Like and it's before it even is. You still have 2 games to go. You could realistically come back, but you probably won't. Whereas in football, in the playoffs, where it's just that one game, anything can happen. And you never really know. Even at halftime, you might think you know what's going to happen, but you just don't. Where in the NBA and the MLB, having the series stretches out a little more, it does make it to where the better team almost always wins.
Yeah, it's more accurate.
Way more accurate. But at the same time, that one win for the football game is much more exciting than the series win.
And this is proven why, because think about this. Think about what if you're a baseball, hockey,
March
basketball
Madness.
fan.
Woo!
Oh, March Madness. Yeah. I was gonna say if I might pick Syracuse basketball as second.
Yeah.
Because again, of the one and done thing, because you think about this, if you had the option for your team in MLB or the NBA to either win the championship in a 4-game sweep or in a 7-game series, who wouldn't choose the 7-game series if you know you're going to win anyways?
You definitely want 7 games.
Yeah.
You want the roller coaster.
The 4th game, if you sweep them, it's already over. Now it is like there is something to be said if it was like a rival or, but rivalries more and more feel like they're dying out in sports. There would like the Red Sox to sweep the Yankees, that dominance would feel great. But at the same time, to break their hearts in a 7th game, that would feel even better. And just the tension, the excitement of being on the edge of your seat. If you have a 4-game sweep, you may never be on the edge of your seat for the entire series, which is sad. It takes something away. So I think Packers are the right choice for me. Or I mean, there is no right choice, but that's what's in my heart. Is there anything else? Like obviously winning it all, the best feeling in sports. But what? Like, go deeper on that because we've already got. Now we're saying a single game series or winning a 7th game feels better than a sweep. What else can sweeten that championship?
Something else that I've come across in my development as mainly as a Browns fan, because I'll never feel the same way for a Buckeyes fan. But I was thinking about the other day as we approach like free agency, and I know that players that I like are going to leave the Browns, right? Like we have a lot of people that joined the team this year that were a great addition. Like one of them is Zadarius Smith. He wasn't on our team last year, but he was on our team this year. But if Zadarius Smith leaves this offseason, I would like him to stay because he's good, but it will not hurt me. I have no real connection to him. But players like Greg Newsome or Martin Emerson Jr., who are people that we drafted that have been on the team for like 3 years.
Yeah.
I have, for whatever, I don't know why it is, but players that you draft on your team, I have so much more connection to that I don't want them to leave. Like Nick Chubb, our running back that we drafted. I want Nick Chubb to stay. I would love for him to play on the Browns forever because we drafted him.
Yeah.
If you're a free agent signing, it is not the same. And I think that goes a long way, especially in the NFL, for how building a team can be so satisfying because you watch someone that you cheered for when they were drafted. You didn't know if they were going to be good or not, but you were hoping that they would be good when you drafted them. And they come to the league, and your team might have stunk when you first got them. And then the building process of going from bad to good with those players that you drafted is one of the most satisfying things in sports.
That's so true, and it explains why, to me, why it was so hard as a Packers fan for Aaron Rodgers to leave for me personally is because he was a homegrown guy. And I think to baseball with the Red Sox, when they traded Mookie Betts, that hurt so much because he was our homegrown guy. We found him. He was good for us. And then they got rid of him. Whereas now, granted, not as good anymore, but Chris Sale, still a big star pitcher who was traded to the Red Sox, and they just got rid of him this offseason. That didn't hurt me at all. But trading Mookie Betts, who was our guy that we found, came up with us. Yeah, the homegrown players, watching them go from rookie, from possibly unknown to them actually being really successful, that makes the attachment to the team, it just feels so much better. And so I feel like, too, maybe that's part of the reason why Kevin Durant going to the Warriors and then winning felt even worse. Like they were already dominant, but then it's not even like you could be mad at the Warriors because you just don't like teams winning over and over again. But it's one thing when it's a bunch of guys they found that they drafted and they just built up a really good team. When you're just bringing in mercenaries, it feels a little more insulting. It doesn't feel the same, which is also, see if you agree with this, it's a concern I have for college football now, because college football traditionally always would be like, once you're recruited, you go to this college and then you're there for your whole college career. And you don't, like, there was ways players could transfer a few years ago, but now it's all, everybody's a mercenary. If you don't get all the playing time you want, even if you do, you have a lot of success, you can still leave for better NIL money somewhere else. And like this year for your Buckeyes, like half of the guys on the team weren't on the team last year. And it just doesn't feel, to me, that doesn't feel the same. I feel like it's going to hurt granted, I don't have a team, but it's just going to hurt my connection to college unless that is sorted out a little bit.
Yeah, college football is in a horrible place right now.
Yeah.
It's in a very, very bad place with how the transfer portal was set up. There's no rules. The NCAA is done. And that's a whole other thing to get into. Is just where college football is at right now, with the mercenaries and everything that you're talking about. And it's the same thing. It's a lot of the same of what's going on in the NBA as well. A lot of like the people building the super teams and things like that. That's why, as much as people hate the Warriors and what they did with Steph Curry and Klay Thompson and Draymond Green, that was one of the most pure ways an NBA dominant franchise has ever been built. With Steph Curry, who they drafted, Klay Thompson, who they drafted, Draymond Green, who they drafted. Like, they didn't have to bring anybody in. Like, people hate on LeBron because he went to Miami and brought in Chris Bosh, and then he joined up with D. Wade. That's a hateable team, and I love LeBron.
That's right. I hated that team, and I like LeBron too,
And everybody hates the Warriors, but they did exactly what your franchise is supposed to do. But nobody can do it because it's hard to draft teams and it's hard to build a team. But that's what makes it so satisfying. In the NFL, it's a lot easier to build up your team via the draft.
Yeah.
In the past couple of years, we've seen some of the quarterback movement, and that's one of the biggest ones is drafting a quarterback. That's one of the most controversial ones, drafting your quarterback and hoping that he's good. I went through that with Baker Mayfield for many years, and when we made it to the playoffs, it was so satisfying when we finally made it and Baker broke through and was playing good. Whereas this year, the Browns made the playoffs with Joe Flacco, who joined the team mid-year, and I had the satisfaction was not even close.
Yeah, that one has to feel extra weird. Obviously, you're still going to cheer for your team, but it just has to feel weirder when it's somebody that wasn't even on your team to start the season, and then they're the one kind of leading you through. But maybe there could be something that is to be said of when you have more player movement versus a team that is guys that have stuck around, that were drafted by the team and grew up in their careers there, versus the guys that just come in as free agents. I feel like that's just a subconscious reminder of how ridiculous it is. Like when you're doing that, it feels like you're not cheering for individuals, for people. You're just cheering for clothes, like Jerry Seinfeld in his old bit. That it's just a reminder of that when you have Joe Flacco coming in, or when you're a fan of the Yankees and you're just cheering for the stars that they bring in every offseason, or now the Dodgers. It's not the same. And you're just cheering for a hat. You're just cheering for a jersey. You're not cheering for it. Like, I guess, again, going back to Aaron Rodgers, following him to New York, still cheering for him because he was a player I liked, a person I liked, because it was on the field play. It's kind of wacky off the field, but you cheer for the people because they're people. You cheer for the faces. You don't just cheer for the jerseys.
See, but that's so different, though. Now, it was never like that.
Yeah.
No one has ever done that until the past, 10 years. People following players and being a fan of them. No person who was a Packers fan in 1980 would have ever cheered for the quarterback if he left.
Yeah.
Because they're a Packers fan. Whereas now, which I hate this a lot. Young kids that grow up places, they love players. If you notice, the jerseys, if you go out and you see young kids between the ages of 5 years old and 18 years old, they have jerseys of players that are just not even affiliated with the team that they like. And that is not something that I like because I never grew up that way. I was a Browns fan. And so I wasn't a fan. I could be a partial fan of Peyton Manning. I liked Peyton Manning, but I was not a fan of Peyton Manning. He wasn't on my team. And now there's so many, especially with the NBA, there's so much movement going on to where your team is never the same every year. Your players aren't staying for a long period of time. And so it's hard to connect to a franchise. A lot more times people are connecting to a player because they can cheer for him through his entire career and follow him around, which has developed a lot in the past 10 years or so. And I hate it. I hate it. And I understand why. I'm a LeBron fan.
Yeah.
I like LeBron. I'm not a Lakers fan. I don't cheer for the Lakers. I cheer for LeBron to do well. If my team's not playing him, I can root for him as a secondary. But I would never go from being a Cavs fan to a Heat fan to a Cavs fan to a Lakers fan because LeBron switched teams. I'm always a Cavs fan.
See, I partially, probably this is because this is how I did grow up, because I moved around a bit when I was a child, enough to where I didn't feel like I had a local team. It wasn't like my dad either, or like my parents didn't grow up. My mom cheered for the teams where she grew up, but I didn't grow up where they grew up, so there was no local connections for me at all. So I already was just cheering for players that I liked growing up, and I've stuck with teams over the years, but I grew up that way, and I think that's better, and I'll tell you why, is because if you pick a player you like, you find a player you gravitate towards, whoever it is, then you know how that player is going to kind of conduct themselves, that they are going to, if there's a certain level that they achieve and the effort they put in and all that, they're going to keep doing that more than likely. Whereas if you have a team, I think of the Pittsburgh Pirates, for example. If you are a fan of the Pirates and you're sticking with the Pirates, you've seen so many players come and go because they didn't want to pay for these guys. You've seen so many players traded away because that eventually maybe become great, but you never get to even witness that truly, because your team trades them away before they become too expensive. And so if it's like your team, your ownership, it doesn't feel like they're all in. And so their interests aren't aligned with yours. They're just concerned with making money. If you're cheering for a player, at least your interests are aligned. The player always wants to win, because winning is how you also make money. Whereas owners, especially, and it's different in different sports, but owners and teams, their interest is not always, and in fact, in many cases, the secondary interest is winning versus the top interest, which is making the most money.
So you're saying that cheering for players is the way to go? I think
choosing players over teams is the best way to go. I'm not saying not have a team, have some consistency, but I think that cheering for players, it can be more satisfying in a way.
And I understand your point of view on that one. I will not agree, but that's okay.
Yeah.
And I would say
I guess you weren't old. I don't remember this either, but for the Browns, they literally took their team out of town.
Yeah, it was gone.
Yeah.
The Browns were gone.
Because the owners wanted to make more money, or that was better for them than continuing to support the local fans. And so that is an extreme case of how their interests aren't aligned with yours. They really never are. They just want your money.
But the good thing is this is a good example of it too, is in that case where the Browns were taken out of town, they went to Baltimore. Mm-hmm. They were gone for 2 years. The actual team of the Browns meant so much to that community that they kept the Browns. Mm-hmm. They didn't let them go to Baltimore, especially the Baltimore Browns. Mm-hmm. It was the Baltimore Ravens now because the Brown City sued them and said, no, this belongs to the community. Mm-hmm. And if you watch that final game that the Browns had in that stadium where the players all stayed for 2 hours after the game, they signed all the autographs, all the fans are crying, and just that is such a moment in sports where the connection from fans to players is just so real. Mm-hmm. Because when obviously the owners and everything, they didn't care. They didn't care if they were leaving because they were trying to make money. But just the community aspect of it, of wanting the Browns to stay. Cleveland obviously wanted the Browns to stay. And all of the fans wanted the Browns to stay, but they're going to leave.
Yep.
But just the community that it builds, and that's another thing that makes sports so great. But that they had just built so much history. Mm-hmm. And that's another part of the building that makes sports so fantastic. And switching over to the Super Bowl, which is coming on Sunday, one thing, and this is a fan base, and this is never talked about, but this is an unbelievable thing that I heard the other day on a morning talk show.
Yeah.
They were talking about the Kansas City Chiefs. And in your franchise as a quarterback, you talk about Aaron Rodgers and how it was so great to cheer for him. because you drafted him.
Yeah.
And you watched him go from being an unknown rookie to being really good. The Kansas City Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes should be so likable.
Yeah.
And I'm sure for Chiefs fans, he is the most likable quarterback ever because he was the first Kansas City Chiefs quarterback that was drafted that won a game since 1983.
Wow.
That's 35 years.
Yeah.
Imagine drafting quarterbacks for 35 years and the guy that you draft never turns out to be good. You have mercenary after mercenary after mercenary. These guys that you sign or trade for that never feel like your guy. They never feel like your guy. And finally the Chiefs, and this is why they got Patrick Mahomes, and this is why he's so great, is because they were overdue. They were finally due to get their guy to be good, and because they hadn't had a quarterback win a game that they drafted in 35 years, and then Patrick Mahomes came in and obviously blew the doors off that.
Yeah.
And now they finally have someone who feels like they built, feels like there's their own, that is finally winning games, which hasn't happened since 83. That's unbelievable.
What you're saying makes me nervous. It makes me nervous about the Bears because you want to talk about somebody who's due to finally draft a quarterback that doesn't suck. Odds are either them or the Commanders this year, they both have had similar woes. They just have never had a good quarterback in my entire lifetime. Odds are for at least one of them that's going to change in this year's draft. You talk about Kansas City too, and going back to the community thing of the Browns, you can't have one without the other because you think about it, like I could never, even as big an Aaron Rodgers fan as I am, all the players, the individual players, LeBron, that I'm big fans of, I can never bond with somebody else, even if they're a big Aaron Rodgers fan. We could never have that kind of bond the same way if somebody sees me and they see that I'm a Packers fan and they're a Packers fan, the way we have that bond. And for Kansas City, they routinely known as one of those communities that supports their teams so much. They always have like some of the highest ratings, even when their teams are no good, and that goes for the Royals too. And I even saw that their ratings for the Grammys with Taylor Swift were like the highest in Kansas City because that's how deep the support goes. That they're even supporting their guy's girlfriend in something that's not even a sport. That's how much they love their teams, which is actually amazing.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's insane the community building that sports do as well. And you think about too, when we talk about like the player versus team aspect of it, when you think about like when you see someone who has like a Packers jersey on, or I see someone who has like a Browns jersey on, it tells so much about like that person.
Yeah.
Because you know that they went through so many of the same battles that you did.
That's right.
Of like if they're a true fan, then just the horrible seasons, the fantastic highs, the horrible years, the great highs, and just like the roller coaster of that is. And so that is where the bonding comes.
But it's interesting too, because I'm thinking like I could never, even if I'm not the biggest tennis or golf fan, but you think about those sports, like let's say you were a massive Novak Djokovic fan and you met somebody else who was a big Djokovic fan. I just don't imagine that you guys could have the same kind of connection, the same kind of camaraderie that naturally comes with just seeing somebody else that's a fan of the same team that you are. I don't know why that is, like even in individual sports, why I don't think it would transfer over. I just don't, do you agree with that?
No,
like
I agree with that. Yeah.
But I don't know. It could be different because individual sports, by and large, in the United States, not as big as they are overseas. But still, I mean, people get more rabid overseas about their soccer teams than they do about tennis and whatever, even though that stuff's bigger there.
And if you think about it too, and especially in soccer overseas, they're so player based. They have huge players. Yeah. Ronaldo, Messi, Mbappe, all these like huge player things. And I'm sure they're going through a lot of the same things right now because players have never been more high profile than they are now. Yeah. To where kids are just loving Messi or they're loving Mbappe or whoever their favorite player is, and they jump team. They have like 6 different teams that they're on that they jump around. Like you look at Messi who came to the United States this year, and you know how many Messi fans went from watching every single one of his games to watching every single game of him in the United States, and that's just how it works. And that's kind of just like a newer thing that's been going on.
Yeah, it's tough to square those two out. I'll tell you though, going back to the idea that like watching a player or players growing up on your team, watching them blossom and grow into eventually, hopefully, a championship team. Another point of why that must be the best is because, like, let's say you start a franchise in Madden. Is it fun to start with the best team? Would it be fun to start with the Chiefs or 49ers now in Madden and go through a season? Would that be as satisfying as taking a team that sucks or fantasy drafting the Chiefs so that, you know, at least as a team that you create versus you already picked the most stacked roster? It's just more fun to build a team from the bottom up. And that goes for video games too, I think, for whatever your sport game of choice is.
I mean, it's the same thing for almost anything in life.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, going from the bottom to the top always feels better.
Yeah.
Like your career.
Mm-hmm.
If you started off the best of the best and you always were the best,
yeah,
then that wouldn't be nearly as great as if you started off really crappy and got really good.
Yeah. Yeah. Like it couldn't be, I'll never get to experience this, but being the CEO of some kind of company and like working your way up until you're the CEO of this massive company versus your dad was the CEO and then you get to be the CEO. It like there's no way that would feel as exciting to you. It would feel just normal.
Yeah, and that goes for the same thing as like cheering for someone, right? So RadioU here, if we got a new boss, right? If they hired a new boss from another company, that would not be nearly as satisfying as if somebody from in this company got promoted to boss. And so that's kind of the same thing for your team, your Browns, whoever your team is. If they get a new quarterback and he's really good versus if they started with him as a rookie and he built his way up, feels a lot better. So if getting promoted from within, if you're in that organization, usually it's going to feel better than bringing in somebody new from somewhere else that already has that position.
That's for sure. One last thing, and that is, this is something that I debate all the time with myself. Does winning feel better than losing feels worse?
Winning or losing?
Yeah.
Which
would
is
you
better
rather,
or worse?
because technically they're the same, but would you rather win forever for the rest of your life or never lose again?
Well, that's the exact same.
Yeah, it is. but does what I'm saying is, does it feel better to win,
or does it hurt more to lose?
Does it hurt more to lose?
Yeah, it depends. I have two different answers for this. Depending on who your team is will depend on this answer. It'll never feel good for me for Ohio State to win a regular season game. Now, someone who's a fan of Purdue, when they win a regular season game, I'm sure they're having a great time, and that's epic. Or someone who's a fan of Maryland, or Rutgers, or any of the other lower tier Big Ten teams. Sorry. For Ohio State, they're all lower tier. And as a Buckeyes fan, regular season wins mean nothing. If it's not a big game, it means nothing. And so, in that regard, losing feels way worse. The only win is if they win the national championship, which obviously feels amazing.
Yeah.
But I think losing hurts more as a Buckeyes fan because of the privilege that Buckeyes fans have of winning a lot. Whereas as being a Browns fan, winning feels so much better than losing hurts. Because I felt the hurt already. Yeah. You can't hurt me. Like when they lost to the Texans, you can't hurt. That didn't hurt me. Yeah. I was upset, but that didn't curse my heart. Because I'm so used to the Browns letting me down that when they do win, when they lose, no tears will be shed for me. When they win, tears will be shed for me.
I think in this debate, it is tough because what you bring up is a good point. Like as a fan of the Buffalo Sabres, they have not been in the playoffs, I believe at this time, longer than any other professional franchise in the four major sports in the United States. They've had the longest playoff drought. So them losing any individual game doesn't bother me.
Can never hurt you.
But if they were to make the playoffs, I still think it would hurt. Whereas I've experienced my other three, I've experienced Syracuse, Green Bay, and the Red Sox all winning championships. And I remember them. But I still feel like I remember the hurt of playoff losses deeper than I remember the joy of when the Red Sox won or the joy of when the Packers won. Now, obviously, all of the the losses, many of the losses are more recent because it's been several years since any of them won, but I still feel like the losses stick with you a little more when they're playoffs. Like any regular season game, obviously, I think for anybody, a regular season game feels better than losing, but unless maybe the Buckeyes or Alabama. But I think in the playoffs, I think the loss always hurts more than the win. Even the win of the championship feels good.
And I'm still going to argue it's just team-based. I think it's also team-based. Because there's no joy, there's no hurt that you could feel that would be more joyous. Or there's no hurt that I could feel for the Browns that would be anything close to the joy that I'd feel if they won a Super Bowl. Mm-hmm. There's nothing that would compare.
Yeah.
No moment, there's no single game loss that in my lifetime I would ever remember more. Mm-hmm. Remember the feeling of more than the Browns winning the Super Bowl. And I can tell you now, as a Browns fan, us just making it to the playoffs. When we made it to the playoffs for the first time in my life, the joy of that far exceeds the hurt that I felt. Because I've been hurt by the Browns, but we've lost so much to where, like, what is really going to... Which of the losses hurts me the most in a bunch of seasons that don't matter? And we lost the Texans this year. It was tough. Like, it stunk.
Yeah.
Did I think we were going to win the Super Bowl this year? No. So, therefore, because of our lack of success, my expectations are so much lower for the team. You can't hurt me if my expectations are low.
Yeah.
But if my expectations are low and we win, then I'm going to be the most joyous ever. Yeah. Ohio State, my expectations are so high that when we do lose, it hurts so much more. Rather than we do win, it feels like we're doing what we're supposed to be doing.
Yeah. I think, the other thing you have to think is, like, for the Packers, any individual playoff loss feels worse than any individual win. But you think if you get to the championship, if you accumulate all the good feelings of all the wins that you have to get to win a championship along the way, then it has to overcome the pain of the possible loss. And that has to be true, because if not, if the journey isn't better than the possible end of a loss, then why do any of us go along for the ride?
That's the truth. But a lot of the issues that people have is when they have unreal expectations for their team.
Yes.
When you're a fan of a mid-tier team, but you expect them. Like, you want to know who? You know who this really hurts? I can give you a great example of a team that constantly
I know where you're going.
They're going to win the Super Bowl.
You're thinking of?
The Cowboys.
Yeah.
And that's why Cowboys fans are so upset every year. You have these unreal expectations. You think your team's up here, that you should be winning the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And then you keep on coming short of it. You think your team is Ohio State. They're not Ohio State. No. And so you keep on coming short of it.
Yep.
If I was a Rutgers fan and I thought they were going to get the college football playoff every year, I'm going to be hurt every year when they lose time and time again. So Cowboys fans, you got to be a little more realistic.
Isaiah just called you Rutgers.
Sorry.
It is the Riot.